Welcome to one of the first sessions of Day 2 of MD&M Biomed Digital, Convergence of Image-Guided Robotics and AI Technologies in Clinical Practice, sponsored by Cretex and Fallhaber Micromo, and presented by Eyal Morag, MD, Chief Medical Officer, Microbot Medical, and Gal Yaniv, MD, co-founder and CMO, ADOC Medical. Dr. Morag and Dr. Yaniv will discuss their experiences as clinicians who are instrumental in developing AI in radiology and image-guided medical robotics. Stay tuned for an innovative discussion.
It is my honor to be a guest lecturer at the Biomed Device Conference. Although it is still a virtual conference, I have really warm sentiments to Boston, where I spent almost 20 years of my life. My name is Dr. Eyal Morag, and I'm here with my friend and colleague, Dr. Gal Yaniv. Both of us are practicing interventional radiologists who share the passion for medicine and technology. It is our pleasure to present our experiences as physicians who play a key role in young evolving companies and projects in the field of robotics and artificial intelligence. As far as my background, I graduated from Boston University. I did my residency and fellowship in Boston. I held several chairmanship positions, two in Israel, two in the States and one in Israel. I'm currently the CMO of a company called Microbot Medical, which develops robotic devices for different clinical applications. In addition, I am a member of the scientific advisory board at Exact Robotics, which markets the first FDA-approved hands-free robotic system for percutaneous procedures. In addition, I'm also the medical director at ADOC, which is an AI radiology company, currently one of the leading companies in the field. And I'm involved in several additional companies, early stage companies in Israel. Gal, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you, Dr. Morag. For myself, currently I'm the head of the Endovascular Neurosurgery unit at Sheba, Tel Hashomer Hospital at Israel. I'm also a co-founder and chief medical officer at ADOC, which Dr. Morag mentioned, which is the leading radiology AI company in the world right now. I also participated in the scientific advisory board of Microbot Medical and another company called InRatio. I'm a double graduate from the Technion, Israel Institute of Technology. And I also finished my radiology residency at Sheba, Tel Hashomer Hospital at Israel as well. Recently, I finished 2 fellowships at the United States, Neuroradiology Fellowship at Yale School of Medicine, and Endovascular Neurosurgery Fellowship at Mount Sinai Hospital at Manhattan and New York City. Also a member of the Talpiot Medical Leadership Program at Sheba Tel Hashomer Hospital.
Great, thank you, Gal. And we will start by giving you an introduction and sharing our clinical experiences as physicians who are actively involved in developing image-guided medical robotics and AI. And in the short time that we have quite a bit of material to cover. We'll give a short background of image-guided robotics, talk a little bit about the evolution of AI utilization in radiology, kind of mention the forces driving medical robotics, and we have to mention the effect of the COVID epidemic on these technologies. We will talk a little bit about current clinical utilization of AI in medical robotics, and Gal will share his experience with ADOC, and we will touch on the future, which we are experiencing now, basically the convergence of all these technologies. So where does the word robot comes from? It is a fairly new term in English. Emerged in 1923 from a translation of a Czech play written by a Czech writer who became famous for his science fiction stories. And the term comes from the Czech word robotnik, which means forced worker. And the word robota means drudgery, forced labor, and compulsory service. 1961 was the first robot patent that was filed by a fellow named George devil, and almost a year later, in 1962, a company called Unimation was formed, which stood for Universal Automation, by a fellow named Joe Engelberger. And the first production version of the industrial robot was installed in a die casting machine. So why use robots? Robots are used in many environments and for numerous applications. I chose two different categories that apply to our medical world, in which robots can shine and have the greatest impact. The applications in the 4D environments, difficult environments like lifting heavy weights, dangerous environments. An example would be extinguishing fire on a ship or a shore drilling rig. Dirty environments, working in toxic areas, and dull motions and applications, for example, in assembly line. Another category includes tasks that enhance our performance, or the 4A tasks: augmentation, assistance, automation, and autonomous, and we will mention all of them. Many different classifications exist for robots. Again, I chose the one that is relevant to us as physicians based on applications in the clinical world. These basically kind of are divided and apply to either just the patients, just the physicians, or a combination of both. And you have examples here in the 5 different categories. I think one important thing to remember is what are the main requirements for medical robotics? What do we expect? And those are divided into 4 important requirements, as you can see in this diagram. By the way, all of them pose a significant technical and technological challenges to both to the designers and makers of robotics in medicine. So simple operation is a requirement, compact size and low weight, important, easy sterilization, definitely a big issue. And I think the most important issue for us is, and many of the users of robotics, is safety. We have an example, kind of a list of items on the safety section. Examples would be effective control for force and speed, full control in takeoff at any stage of operation, limited force and force feedback, very important, with all the interruptions of adjacent equipment and unity against magnetic interference, fail-safe mode near singularities, and another issue is limited workspace. We have very significant, expensive real estate in our procedure rooms, and we want to avoid damage with clinicians and patients. I would like to use the Da Vinci platform, I think, which is well known to all of you, if not most of you, if not all of you, and it's the most widespread surgical robot. This is by far the most widely used, and according to the Intuitive company, which was founded over 25 years ago, since its first robotic assisted systems were cleared by the FDA for procedure, general laparoscopic surgery, there are more than 5,500 Da Vinci systems used in over 65 countries, and over 7 million Da Vinci procedures, which have been completed worldwide since through 2019. Very, very impressive numbers. So this is an image of the Intuitive surgical Da Vinci system. As you can see, the physician is actually embedded within the control console. It features a magnified 3D high definition vision system and tiny wristed instruments that bend and rotate far greater than the human hand. And I think that's the main use of the Da Vinci system and what makes it so useful. Surgeons operate through just a few small incisions And again, the important thing is to realize that the surgeon is in 100% in control of the robotic system at all times. So the operation of a robot is completely dependent on the hand movement of the surgeon, and there is really no robotic assistance or augmentation to the surgeon's actions. So here's the main advantage is that the surgeon is able to carry out more precise operations than previously thought possible. In a summary, an article that was published in the summer of 2018 in the urology literature presented review of 72 studies evaluating the techniques, the open surgery versus the use of robotics, and almost all studies were retrospective single-arm case series, and basically they demonstrated significant reduction in morbidity, less blood loss, reduced length of stay, comparable clinical outcomes, and shorter operative duration and learning curve compared to the equivalent laparoscopic technique. So very impressive results. To show you the explosion in data on medical robotics literature, you can see that since 2012, there's been an explosion of literature related to robotic surgery and robotic usage. I chose this timetable of surgical robotics to demonstrate the three main stages or generations of medical robotics. You can see, as you can see in stage one or generation one, what they call or coin the term industrial robots. Those are predominantly in the area of orthopedics and neurosurgery, and these robots were performed external or robust robust internal manipulations. So large organs, not that delicate procedures. At stage two or generation two, the robots kind of advanced into the minimally invasive surgery realm. And here you can see the automated endoscopic system, the Da Vinci, which is mentioned at the year 2000, which we mentioned already. And that leads us to the third stage or third generation of robotics, which we're going to discuss today, the intrabody robots. That includes, flexible capsules, flexible active catheter system, robotic endoscopes, patient-mounted robots, and the area that I am personally involved with is transluminal procedures and endovascular procedures. As far as the stage, the third stage or third generation of medical robotics, I think where this technology shines is with when it is coupled with advanced imaging and navigation. The mainstay of image guidance in most endovascular treatment suites still remains a 2D fluoroscopic guidance, requiring the administration of contrast, which is potentially nephrotoxic. Many centers have access to on-table CT, but it does not offer real-time intraoperative localization, which is a huge challenge for us. And without this capability, the remotely controlled endovascular procedures are really unable to achieve their full potential. I think the ideal setup for endovascular navigation includes, by definition, a reconstructed preoperative CT or magnetic resonance images, which are angiographically oriented and mapped to the patient. Those allow movements of the catheter tip in 2D image to be traced in real time on the 3D reconstructive images. I think that's a very important point, because currently we're looking at a 2D image of a catheter that is placed in a 3D structure. The 3D image for navigation and dynamic cross-sectional views of the anatomy and all three axes have to be displayed on the monitor when you perform the procedure. And an important issue that we have to realize is the accessibility and availability of these processed CT angiographic or MR angiographic images to the performer, to the physician who was performing the procedure. And these are performed all in the radiology department and require dedicated protocols and analysis by a dedicated vascular radiologist. So this brings me to the next problem, or the next topic of the situation in radiology right now, and it's kind of worldwide, is worsening shortage of physicians. And this is just a list of an example of current numbers and status of radiologists in different parts of the world. For example, in the entire continent in Africa, if you remove Egypt and South Africa, there are only 6 pediatric radiologists. Nigeria, fewer than 60 radiologists for 190 million people. Mexico, 4,000 radiologists, 430 million. Japan, 36 radiologists per million. And this problem is a universal problem. I just wanted to contrast the situation in the US. One hospital, well-known hospital in Boston, the Mass General, has over 100 radiologists. So a huge discrepancy in number of radiologists per capita. So we are experiencing an imaging data explosion, and this is where we see the emergence of AI in radiology. I chose to quote GE Healthcare, saying that over 90% of healthcare data comes from medical imaging, and more than 90% of medical images worldwide are not really analyzed. And you can see in the graph on the right-hand side, the explosion of data in the last few years. And this is where AI comes in and enables us to increase the level of accuracy in detection and diagnosing of disease. AI enables us to reduce delays in identifying and acting on abnormal medical images. And we are experiencing in our implementation of AI algorithm significant improvement in workflow and efficiency. So the current, just a couple of words on the current status of AI in radiology, and Gal is gonna follow this slide with this presentation. The tasks that are most relevant to the field of radiology include pattern recognition, pattern identification, planning of procedures, language comprehension through radiology reports, object and sound recognition, and problem solving. We're now experiencing a whole new field of radiomics, which relates to indication for therapy using AI algorithms, and also offering patients and physicians prognostic data on treatment outcomes. So to summarize, medical imaging is currently one of the most promising areas to apply AI technology, and we currently have dozens of FDA-approved applications. Gal?
Thank you, Dr. Morag. Fascinating stuff. I would like to speak a little bit now on the radiology part and how AI actually impacts the field of radiology. And as we all know, radiology is probably the most data-driven specialty in the medical world. But on one side, there's huge amount of data, there's data overload. And on the other side, we know that we can make significant insights which can improve the patient care. But we need to tilt the balance towards making data insights while managing this huge data overload. And in this case, AI can actually help us. If we look at the statistics, this data overload actually creates side effects, both on the patients and on the physicians. We know that almost 50% of radiologists, which is a huge number, complaining of fatigue and burnout. And this can actually create side effects for the patients themselves. First of all, we know that in the last year, there's 45% increase in time to diagnosis because of the imaging overload on the radiologist. And even more importantly, there is increasing percentage of errors and mistakes reading these studies, reaching almost 4% for CTs and MRIs. This led to the understanding that humans themselves, the radiologists themselves, cannot really cope with all this increasing amount of data, and technology should come and help us manage this, this overload. The first thing that was tried to be done was by using the usual computer vision techniques in order to do image analysis, to look at CTs and MRIs and try to find abnormalities. And one of the oldest and traditional technologies was actually computer vision. And as you probably know, the most, let's say, relevant case was how to diagnose a cat in a picture. Why it's not a dog or a mouse. So we know that machines and computers are actually blind, and what they do, they can actually create numbers. Let's say numbers that describe how many colors or how many shapes are in a specific pictures. And once you give each pixel a number, you can create a big picture. And you can create features. So in the old technologies like computer vision, you can actually create specific rules how to recognize a cat or an apple. So an apple can actually have red color, can have a rich texture, and probably one feature that is relevant to a lot of apples is that it has a leaf. However, if you look at the Apple logo, the computer company, you see all of this, but it's not really an apple. So this is actually one of the difficulties in just creating patterns or conditions to recognize pictures. So if we look at a cat, right, we can create features. We know that the cat have a round face. He has two pointy ears. It has a fur, and with high percentage, you can diagnose that this is a cat. And if you have a very nice cat, usually you're right. But what happens when the features change, right? Most of the old computer vision algorithm would not have recognized that this sad cat is actually a cat. And in the last few years, a new technology emerged, which is called deep learning. Deep learning is actually a branch of AI, of artificial intelligence. And the big advantage of AI that you don't create a set of rules, but rather you create a learning process, computer learning process, using sophisticated algorithms called neural networks, which are basically based on mostly statistics, very elaborated statistics, in order to create much more, let's say, vague and wider element of image recognition. And this actually frees you from creating lots and lots of rules, and actually you just need to feed the algorithm with enough relevant and good enough data, and you can create an algorithm that can recognize patterns. These neural networks, as I mentioned before, actually works as a hierarchical features, which means from very small elements in the picture, from sub-pixels to a bunch of pixels. And by creating enough of these cycles of positive feedback learning, you can actually create an algorithm that can recognize a cat or a face, which can be quite different between one picture and another, but can be almost equivalent to a human being. If we look on the timeline of this fascinating technology, the deep learning technology, we can see that Google, which was one of the first companies to recognize and develop these algorithms, we can see that the wildfire actually erupted around 2015. And this is actually around the time when there was an annual competition to show whether deep learning algorithm can match human abilities to recognize features in pictures. And we can see that the first time that actually an algorithm, the archive in 2015, matched and even outgained the human performance in recognizing features in pictures. And 2015 is actually considered the year in which deep learning emerged and showed its real potential to augment us people for tasks related to pictures. Since then, since 2015, and this is a picture from 2020, this technology actually exploded. And dozens of companies all over the world with all kinds of technologies and fields emerged. These are just a few of the medical startups which are involved in radiology, which all of them actually uses this technology. And this shows you the huge potential of this technology to actually change the radiology world and help radiology cope with all this data overload. This is, I'm sure a lot of you know, this is the Gartner hype cycle. And as you can see here on top, shows that in 2017, deep learning and machine learning are at the peak of inflated expectation. And actually, right now, 2020, 2021, we're actually reaching the plateau of the technology. And we all know that really radiology has accepted and started to use in a very broad way this technology. And this is embedded right now in a lot of hospital day-to-day practice. And the example I want to share with you is actually about ADOC, the company in which I'm involved. And ADOC is considered today probably one of the leading companies in AI in radiology. For ADOC, which was founded around 2016, the current numbers talk about 6 FDA clearances, 6 different FDA algorithms to detect mostly time-sensitive pathologies like intracranial bleeds or spine fractures. And these solutions are actually embedded in more than 400 medical centers all over the world, most of them North America, but some of them South America, Europe, Middle East, Australia. Just to show you how the radiology world accepted machine learning and AI is this amazing statistic, for my opinion, that 96% of the radiologists and hospitals that actually tried these products decided to continue and even pay for these products, showing the real value of these products for a radiologist. And of course, all of this, as should be in the medical world, is validated by numerous abstracts and papers in peer-reviewed journals. The workflow is very simple for this kind of products. Patient, either from the ED or an inpatient or outpatient, is scanned. While he is scanned, the images are actually sent to a virtual server, which the virtual server process the images and send back after just a couple of minutes a small batch of pictures showing whether there is a pathology or there is not a pathology. And Once the radiologist is available to read the pictures, it can see whether there is an alert or there is not any alert for any time-sensitive pathology. The company is trying to be as broad as possible to communicate with the radiologist and physicians involved in any case. So you have a work list integration, smart work list integration, which actually can change the order of the exams according to the priority, whether the scan is positive or negative for time-sensitive pathology. There is also a desktop app which helps you see any alerts while you're off the working station or off the PACS, and this actually pops out and you can see whether there's something very important in the ER. And also you can have alerts to your smartphone, which is a huge advancement, of course. So the algorithm which are available today are mostly, as I said, time-sensitive pathologies. We're talking about intracranial hemorrhage, vessel occlusion, which creates strokes, spine fractures, pulmonary embolism, and the intra-abdominal free air. But as time goes by, ADOC as a company and also other companies are involved not only in time-sensitive pathologies, but also in time-consuming pathologies, such as brain aneurysms, bone lesions, liver lesions, etc. Again, as I mentioned before, the AI also aids in a very time-sensitive pathologies like strokes, but the company is not just involved in AI, but also with workflow integration. And stroke is a wonderful example for that, because stroke involves a lot of teams, a lot of clinical teams, and everyone should be aware of what's going on, and everyone should have the data. So you have an app today which you can manage a stroke patient throughout all the process from acceptance at the ER until getting treated by either medication or endovascular procedure. And everything is done very quickly through the app with all team members involved in the treatment. Another nice case, use case for AI, which is actually used right now in hospitals and changed how hospitals are working, is for outpatients. So usually when a patient is invited to be scanned as an outpatient, he comes, he does his scan and he goes home. However, what happens if there's like an urgent finding? So in that case, the patient should be called back, and it takes time, and he's already at home and needs to go back to the ER. And today, patients in several medical centers are not released home before an ADOC alert was positive or negative. Only after a negative scan was issued by ADOC, the patient can go home. However, if something worrying is found in the scan, it goes straight from the scanner to the ER, and of course saves time and probably his health. Numerous studies has also showed the financial and the other benefits of AI, including reduced throughput of patients in the ER and in the hospital, reduced lengths of stay, reduction in hospitalization costs, and of course, reduction in the time of reading of scans. All of these just shows you why there is such large acceptance in the radiology world for these products. Again, the algorithms are getting smarter and smarter. We know that because there are more and more algorithms right now, some of them for brain, some of them for chest, some of them for abdomen, we need to create smarter algorithm so in such way that if you, let's say, scan an abdomen, okay? When you scan an abdomen, you actually got a part of the lung, you got an abdomen, and you got a pelvis, and you also get the spine. So today there are algorithms that actually navigate the right algorithm to the right body part. So if an abdomen was scanned, there is one algorithm that scans the abdomen for free air, the other one scans the lung for lung nodules or PE, and another one scans the spine for fractures. And all in all, what I would like to say is that as the time goes by, the solutions are becoming more and more comprehensive, more and more sophisticated, and this will definitely help radiologists in the next few years benefit more than for their time, creating much more let's say, elaborated and sophisticated extrapolation of data and potentially improving patient outcome. Dr. Morag?
Thank you, Gal, for an amazing presentation. I would like to share my own experience with two medical robotic companies, a robot performing CT-guided biopsies and a robot performing endovascular procedures. As an introduction, I will present several examples of existing well-established robotic systems. Start with the Niobe magnetic navigation system from Stereotaxis, which utilizes two computer-controlled permanent magnets, relatively large in size, to create a magnetic field in the patient's chest. It does require the use of catheters that incorporate a permanent magnet within the tip, and that allows for manipulation of their movement through adjustment of the external magnetic field. Another relatively well-established robot is the Sensei robotic system from Hansen Medical, which uses a robotic steerable sheath to manipulate catheters within the heart. And the last robot is the CorePath system from Corindus, who was just recently acquired by Siemens, which is an FDA cleared for robotic assisted percutaneous coronary interventions. So this is the Stereotaxis Genesis robotic magnetic navigation technology. As you can appreciate, there are two large magnets, each within the within each side of the patient's table. A relatively large system, and is used for electrophysiology procedures. The Sensei by Hansen Medical utilizes a relatively large robotic arm system that is mounted via a metallic arm on the table side rail, and the operator uses a proprietary control console, as you can see on the right-hand side, which is mobile and can be placed away from the procedure table, either within the room or outside. It's relatively large and robust. And the Corindus, or the CorePath robotic system, which uses a similar setup, and as you can appreciate, there's a large robotic arm with a robot mounted on it on the side rail next to the patient, and the physician or operator is actually sitting in front of a large console with all the control panel in front of him, either within the room or outside. I wanted to go through some traditional versus robotic capabilities, basically emphasizing the 3-generation robots compared to the traditional interventional procedure. And I divided that, it is divided by functions, navigation, lesion assessment, access to care, and protection methods. So our current traditional intervention, as far as navigation, uses trial and error, as we all are well familiar with the technique. As far as lesion assessment, we use visual estimation. The access to care, which we mentioned already, is limited. in the global markets, predominantly due to shortage of performing physicians. As far as protection methods, we use heavy lead, and we have significant exposure to uncovered areas. The current robotic interventions or robotic systems, as far as navigation, the robot is predominantly used for steering and discrete control movements. Lesion assessment is very accurate in the sub-millimeter range. We face the same access to care issues of limited access, and one huge obvious advantage as far as the protection methods is reduced radiation exposure and improved ergonomics. So the physician does not wear lead and is sitting comfortably next to the console. The last or final generation of robotics with potential usage within the navigation area, we expect full procedure automation. As far as lesion assessment, we hope to have AI-powered decision support system, combining pre and intra-procedure data. As far as access to care, we hope to have robust remote capabilities, which will increase efficiency and obviously increase access of the patient to these procedures. And protection methods, again, similar to the second generation, there's elimination of radiation exposure and improve ergonomics. This slide, which shows the Corindus CorePath system, I used to kind of to emphasize the disadvantage of current endovascular robots. As far as size is concerned, the procedure room is an expensive real estate and is crowded with lots of equipment. So this large arm and side arm, as well as large robot mounted on the side rail, can be an issue. There are obvious issues related to capital equipment. The price of this equipment is high. One additional important limitation is a narrow range of equipment. You are limited to certain types of wires and catheters while using these robots. And sterilization, believe it or not, is a big issue. You have to cover these large robots or equipment with significant and proprietary or a specifically designed drapes. I would like to go back to the main 6 requirements for medical robotics, just to refresh our memories: safety, sterilization, precision in the positioning of the instrument, high efficiency, very important to have a user-friendly system, and obviously we're looking to minimize cost. When we came up with the platform for Liberty in Microbot Medical, we were trying to address each of these basic requirements by designing a compact, light, accurate, open system approach, intuitive, remote controlled, easy to mount, inexpensive, and disposable. Quite an impressive list and a real significant, formidable challenge. As you can see here in this image on the right-hand side, this is the size of our first generation robot, the Liberty robot from Microbot Medical. And the size of the robot is quite obvious. You can hold it in your hands, and there is no need for large capital equipment similar to the robots that you just saw. I just wanted to demonstrate on the left-hand side the size of the remote control. Again, we hope to eliminate the need for capital equipment and demonstrate and democratize robotic catheterization. The remote control is very intuitive and easy to use. In addition, we added the proprietary robotically steerable micro guide wire with the hope of decreasing the number of wire exchanges, and this is what you're seeing on the right-hand side. as we call it, the one and done capability of using a steerable guide wire. I would like to share my experience with a different type of robot, which is used for percutaneous biopsies. The image-guided percutaneous biopsies are among the most commonly performed procedures in interventional radiology. It's kind of a bread and butter of what we do on a daily basis. And I think I mentioned here some of the major challenges. You know, while most targets are amenable for biopsy, we face challenges for a number of reasons. The lesions could be low conspicuities. It can be small in size. We have often overlying or intervening structures precluding us from reaching the target. And we definitely struggle continuously with motion, such as that related to respiration. We use various techniques or technologies to perform a successful biopsy, and there are lots of different tricks. Obviously, we have to choose the correct imaging modality. Most commonly, either CT or ultrasound. We do perform some under MRI guidance. We often have to use pre-procedure intravenous contrast, or even during the procedure, and use anatomic landmarks to get to the target. We often position the patient in different positions to get there. We perform organ displacement by injecting saline or other techniques. If we don't have a choice, we do a trans-organ approach, going through an organ to get to the target. We often will angle the CT gantry. We'll use different triangulation methods. Some of us like to use the real-time CT fluoroscopy, obviously, or ultrasound. We will use sedation or breath hold to minimize the breath-related or breathing-related motion. And we do use some software, fusion software, fusing different modalities to increase accuracy. So this is an example of a really challenging biopsy, needle biopsy of a soft tissue mass next to the aorta. The patient here is lying on his belly. On the left-hand side, you can see the skin markers that we use to calculate, to determine the exact location of the needle entrance. And then on the right-hand side, you can actually see the needle deep going through the back next to the lung. Obviously, you want to avoid the lung, and slowly reaching the target, trying to avoid the aorta and other vital structures, and sliding it between the vertebral bodies and the transverse processes. So this is I'm introducing to you the Exact Robotics robot. Exact Robotics is developing the world's first and only hands-free robotic solution that can significantly improve targeting. And we basically trying to improve all three items: accuracy, efficiency, and consistency. All are being targeted by the robot. We call it the ACE robot, standing for the first letters of these principles. And we use this robot right now predominantly for percutaneous biopsies, but we intend, and I'll show it to you, to use it for to guide other tool and inserting these tools into specific targets for different indications. So this is right now currently the only robotic system that combines planning, navigation with insertion and steering. We combine the planning and navigation. We use the planning prior to the procedure to and make all our clinical decisions as far as the actual best window and pathway to the target. And we mark it on the scan. We obviously perform pre-procedure CT scan We administer local anesthesia, and then from that point on, the ACE robot executes the biopsy per plan. One very important feature, which I'm going to show you in the next slides, is the non-linear steering capabilities, which enables to overcome deviation due to tissue compliance, other obstacles like other vital organs and patient movement. And this specific robot is synced with the breathing cycle. So this is an example of the non-linear steering capabilities. On the left-hand side, you can actually see the patient lying on his belly. The robot is mounted on the back. On the right-hand side, the physician marks the track, and the target is at the end of the linear marking, and the robot is capable of steering the needle by applying force on the hub around obstacles. I hope this movie shows. This is the non-linear steering on a Phantom. I hope you can appreciate the white beads as potential obstacles. And here, hopefully this works. And you can see the robot is calculating the path and is now steering the needle around the obstacle to hit the target. I'll show this again. The needle is being steered away and around an obstacle and hits the target right there. So as far as some research related to the robot, we performed both first-in-human and animal studies, and basically showed that the robot can hit a target that is less than 2 millimeters in size, an average depth of 10 centimeters, with a standard deviation of less than 2 millimeters. And we had 59 real patients performed in LA hospital and medical centers in Massachusetts and Hadassah Medical Center in Jerusalem. As far as the animal studies, we had 145 cases. That was all performed as part of the Hadassah Medical Center. So several other important points. Doing all these procedures and as a result of our research, we showed that we need just one insertion to target, and the learning curve includes an average 5 procedures. And you can appreciate the size of the robot with the hand holding it in place. This ACE robot has an average time of 8.5 minutes from skin to target. And we hope to deliver other tools to the target for a variety of percutaneous procedures, which include ablation, biopsy, drug delivery, and hopefully this can be used not just with CT, but with other modalities. I think it is very important to mention here, for obvious reasons, the impact of COVID-19 on this industry, robotics and remote access. So, as we all know, there's been unprecedented limitation in the movement of people, and there's a huge explosion of telemedicine, and the telemedicine approaches have helped to mitigate an adverse effect by replacing or augmenting some previous routine clinical activities. So we have persistence of worldwide travel restrictions. I personally struggle with that, not able to travel to some of our clinical sites. And teleproctoring, we've been using teleproctoring more and more for introduction and supervision of the safe use of novel devices, and that's becoming a necessity. You know, if you look at the history, the successful teleproctoring has been around in the past 25 years across multiple surgical specialties, but almost all literature describes cases of laparoscopic surgery. This is a recent paper coming out of the Neurointerventional Radiology Department at the Lay Hospital in Burlington, Massachusetts. The title was International Teleproctoring in Neurointerventional Surgery and its Potential Impact on Clinical Trials in the Era of COVID-19, Legal and Technical Consideration. And I just include the conclusion of this research, which I think is very important and applies to us in the robotic world, is that teleproctoring has the potential to remove the need for proctor presence in the angiography suite, thereby allowing the field to advance through a continuation of trials and the introduction of new devices in clinical practice. So this is very important and applies to us in the robotics industry. So the advantage of remote robotics, again, I'm using the case of teleproctoring, is obviously decreasing the need for physical presence and could reduce the time delay to schedule a procedure. Decreases the exposure to infection risks and radiation risks for obvious reasons. It could be cost effective because, as we all know, it saves expenses related to travel, food, and lodging. It also has the potential to expand patient access to novel techniques that are not available in the community. This particular group conducted a survey, and the results of the survey was conducted among neurointerventionists from all 5 continents at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. And the interesting results were it showed 33% of the respondents were in favor of 24/7 availability of remote physician supervision through live stream platforms. And it was particularly necessary for junior team members undergoing complex procedures without the possibility of supervision by senior partners. And I think some of us faced it during the last year. I think we cannot not mention the challenges of remote operation in endovascular procedures, and I can share my own personal experience. I think when you compare it to surgery that rely on direct visualization of large structures through microscopes or fiber optic cameras, the feeling is very different than image-guided interventions, because this requires continuous interpretation of dynamic angiographic images, again, mostly done in 2D, but sometimes in 3D, of structures with limited visibility. So that requires the proctor to have a real-time, high-definition visualization of the operator's view, which is not common and it cannot be taken for granted. I think that if you try and have a successful teleproctoring or telerobotic operation, you have to have a careful technical planning of the procedure with well-defined process steps and clear rules and responsibilities assigned to each one of the team members within the procedure, within the procedure room. In addition, obviously, you have to have a very robust broadcasting system, guarantees high quality encrypted transfer of both audiovisual data from multiple sources, because you're using fluoroscopy, digital subtraction, angiography. Obviously, you want to see the operator's hand and surroundings to get a spatial awareness. And a prerequisite would be a reliable bidirectional remote connectivity with negligible latency. You cannot have long latencies for obvious reasons. You would be stuck in the middle of a procedure or with inability to communicate. So this is a real example from the MedPresence proctor view doing a Surpass Evolve flow diversion case from the Leahy group. And these views were configured remotely and included the top left live digital subtracted roadmap. In the top right, you actually see the unsubtracted images in various planes. Those are available to the remote operator. There is a zoom camera at the bottom left that provides a view of the operator's hands and equipment. Also shows here specifically the radial access. And then there's a overhead kind of a fixed camera that is mounted to the ceiling and shows the activity in the room. So Corindus had performed a remote porcine test case in Michigan, and a physician was placed about approximately 100 miles away from the procedure room and was able to perform a catheter navigation without real problems. So I think it is important to stress the fact that the remote robotics, we're certain and we hope and certain that will increase access to care. You know, as I showed you before, the significant shortage of physicians. We know that they have remote rural locations with no access, especially, and these days that's mentioned in the stroke area. We hope that we'll have decreased time to treatment by using remote robotics. As I showed you, will enable teleproctoring and expand capable facility footprint. How does all these technologies converge? Dr. Yaniv spoke about the AI that is now becoming common practice. I think the pre-procedure planning using a 3D and a 2D and 3D image analysis will enable us to plan the optimal endovascular approach, which is not obvious. We also have an interprocedural real live feedback, providing continuous feedback during navigation to the target. So it will show us where we are into where the image in 2D be traced in real time on a 3D reconstructed image. And I think we will also will benefit from post-procedure data analysis, optimizing follow-up and repeat treatments. Just wanted to show you an example of a recent paper that came out of the UC Berkeley group, titled "Could Artificial Intelligence Boost Surgical Robotics to New Heights?" And basically, they used a deep neural network plus a 3D printed depth sensing markers to train a Da Vinci surgical robot to automatically perform peg transfer slightly faster and more accurate than an experienced surgical resident. So this was impressive. There was another paper of the same group in Science about AI software that allows robots to learn how to rapidly plan smooth motion, increasing speed, reduce wear in factories, warehouses, and operating rooms. A live example of a AI-driven surgical platform is this company called Active Surgical. They have a platform called Active Edge that serves as a platform to power surgical innovation, and they describe it as surgical intelligence software and foundational technology. It supports surgeons with critical real-time guidance to achieve best possible outcomes, and it is patented. It's a software. It can accelerate progress in surgical procedures. The actual device is called Active Sight. It's basically mounted on an endoscopy unit. It's a camera that provides real-time visualization as well as tissue perfusion. And it's described as an interoperative imaging and image overlays guided by machine learning. What is the ultimate goal in the endovascular surgery? I see it as combining navigation and remote control. And another example is the cardiac ablation navigation system in the CARDO mapping system by Biosense Webster, which was used in conjunction with the Niobe remote magnetic navigation system, which I showed you before. And it offers features such as automatic navigation of the catheter to a target point. They can also be used with regular catheterization robots using the Hansen robotic technology. And The advantages: precision of catheter positioning beyond that possible with conventional means, consequent decrease in procedure time, fluoroscopy time, and increased safety and overall efficiency. I think if you review the last patents related to automated robotic or endovascular robotic motion, those are the ones that are mentioned now: active device fixation, basically a way to control the microcatheter when the catheter moves back and forth, spin motion, wiggle motion, daughter motion, and constant speed feature of the robot, all a part of a automated system. So it is very important to realize that AI is all data dependent and data driven. And so to integrate AI with robotics, you'll have to have large databases of procedural techniques, which is cannot be taken lightly. You're going to have to apply robust statistical methods and implement multi-layer neural network, similar to what Dr. Yaniv showed, to allow robotic system to learn and ultimately improve their performance. And the hope is automating the robotic platform to improve patient safety and outcomes. So our kind of fantasy is a completely automatic pilot robot or completely autonomous, where you basically mark a spot where the target is, you sit there and you watch the robot navigate by itself. So that will require real-time integration, of all the systems that I described, execution of robust robotic advancement to the designated pathology. You have to use the pre-procedure imaging as well as intra-procedural imaging, the real time, to compute a safe and efficient pathway. I think eventually you'll have to, one of the main complaints of physicians using robots is the loss of tactile feedback, and there are already some specialized gloves that you can wear for tactile guidance and obviously visual guidance. And I think that one of the challenges we face right now is that the robotic segment of the procedure is relatively short, and we hope to increase the hands-free robotic segment of the procedure. And things that we have to be aware of as far as real challenges. Obviously, you have to have a physician on site, even though you have one physician that performs the remote procedure, but you have to have somebody on site to obtain manual access. At this point, the support staff must be present in the room to operate the table, an efficient setup for the robotic system. As far as complications, big issue, there may be no on-site physician capable of converting to manual operation, so you have to take care of that. Other logistical concerns, you have to determine which hospitals initially will most benefit from the installation of the robotic system. As far as training, how much training is needed for physicians and staff to safely perform the procedure. Medical licenses could be an issue. Would boards allow interstate teleoperation? And liability is a huge concern. Who is held liable for if the robot or telecommunication system makes an error? I think that's a lot to cover in a very short time. So I thank you for your time and attention, and chose two great visionaries that talk about robotics to end this talk. Thank you very much.
We hope you enjoyed this MD&M Biomed Digital session. If you have any further questions that were not answered in the questions window, the speaker may reach out to you directly. Make sure to connect with our speakers by clicking on See Who's Speaking on the navigation bar or homepage. Please also visit our sponsors by clicking Virtual Booths, Meet Exhibitors, and easily find the latest products and technologies by searching the product directory.